today. Welcome to the NaPTAN public meeting. Now, my name is BB. I'm the product manager for NaPTAN. This meeting is a little different to the public meetings that we've held in the past. We thought you'd appreciate an update on the work that we've been doing, introducing accessibility data to NaPTAN. So this particular meeting is more of a showcase or an update. Future meetings will go back to being a bit more interactive, and also we were expecting quite large numbers for this particular meeting compared to the attendees traditionally over the last couple of years. So we hope that you enjoy the next hour and a half with us. I'll go through a couple of housekeeping points. Please can I ask that everybody mutes their mics unless you're speaking. Raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment or a reflection. And please do feel free to pop any questions or reflections into the chat at any time. We'll be addressing any questions as we go along in this meeting. And also there'll be opportunities to ask any questions over the course of this meeting as well. Finally, as many of you will know, the NaPTAN supply contract is currently under tender. I just wanted to confirm that we will not be taking any questions in relation to the tender today. Right, I hope that you find today's meeting interesting. Next slide, please, Emily. I'll go through the agenda. So we'll meet the team quickly, and then Geeta will give us an overview of what we've been doing in relation to thinking about how we're going to introduce accessibility data into NaPTAN. There'll be an opportunity for questions after Geeta's talk, then a comfort break for 5 minutes. Then Sham will take us through an activity, which I hope you'll find fun. Then finally, we will move towards winding down the meeting, and we do have an ask, which is to the local transport authorities on this call and how you can help us with our project going forward. I'll also go through the contacts and next meeting dates before we close. Next slide, please. Right, so this is our wonderful multidisciplinary team. So these are the people that work behind the scenes in NaPTAN. If you're emailing into our inbox, the lovely Carla will be responding to you as she's the first person of contact via our inbox. We have many different types of professions that work with us as part of the core team and also wider within DFT. Next slide, please. Right, so over the last few years, there's been significant focus on the accessibility of buses and coaches providing local transport services, but less so on bus stops and stations and public transport stations serving them. I understand that the bus bill has passed the third reading in the House of Commons and it's in its final stages before royal assent. I know that there will be some provisions within the bill to improve safety and accessibility of bus stops and bus stations for disabled people. Therefore, we are enhancing the NaPTAN service to add accessibility data to our service in a couple of ways. We're looking at introducing rail replacement bus data to help coach and bus operators comply with the Public Service Vehicles, in brackets, Accessibility Information, close brackets, Regulations 2023. I think it's more commonly known as PSVAIR. And we're also working on introducing accessibility data to NaPTAN. So this meeting will be focused on the accessibility data area of the work that we're doing. Geeta will showcase the work, our project. She'll go through what the challenge is for NaPTAN, our theories and what we've tested, and talk through what our initial proposal is. Next slide, please. Right, I'm conscious that this meeting is quite long and not everybody will be able to join us for the full duration of this meeting. So I thought I'd put our ask front and centre before I hand over to Geeta. I would like to thank the local transport authorities that have already sent us some accessibility data so that we could start our project. We would like to get more data from local transport authorities. I understand that you might already have some as part of your bus stop audits or drafted some accessibility guidance as well. We'd love to understand that. If you could or would like to speak to us, please could you either send an email to our inbox, and the details are on the slide deck. I'll also post the email address on our chat, or post your contact details, just saying that you'd like to help us in the chat, and we will be in touch to organise a meeting. So with that, next slide, please, Emily. I'll pass on to Geeta.
Thanks, Phoebe. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Gitanjali, and I am product owner with the team. So I'll be talking good few minutes about A+ NaPTAN, what we have learned so far, what we have achieved, and where we are now. When we started with A+ NaPTAN, we know it's gonna be a journey, and since then we have made a really good progress. Along the way, we have learned a lot about accessibility, how important it is to build the reliable and usable accessibility data. The goal has always been clear: to give people with accessibility need the information, authority, and confidence to make their own travel decisions. So we move on to the next slide, which is the core challenge. So public transport, as we know, it's a complex system. Journeys often involve multiple operators, multiple modes of travel spanning across different local authorities. But the real challenge is the accessibility information is not connected across this whole system. And the result is passengers are often face missing, outdated, or disconnected accessibility data, which makes their experience fragmented and unreliable. The direct impact of this is loss of independence. People can't plan their journeys with confidence, and this take away their sense of trust and autonomy. And the biggest impact is it's a barrier to inclusion. People with accessibility needs, they are forced to choose between paying expensive travel or staying at home, which definitely leads to social isolation. So in the end, what happens is the transport network is left underutilized, and it is less inclusive for the entire community. So we'll move on to the next slide to understand more about what is available in terms of accessibility data. The accessibility information for public transport has been recognized as a gap since late 1990s. To understand why A+ NaPTAN and curating data is necessary, first we need to understand and to look why the data which is already available, it cannot be used as it stands. So for 2012 Olympics, some work was carried out to build this data on accessibility, and this data is known as Olympic dataset. The concern is that it covers only 40% of the bus stops, where data from 11 local authorities is missing, and on top of that, the data itself is very limited. It contains only 2 data points: wheelchair and assistance. An update was made in 2016, but it wasn't documented. So it is very difficult for us to confirm the accuracy and consistency of that version either. So what it leads us to is the accessibility data, which is available, which is partial and uneven, making it difficult to plan the journeys. That's why we are curating the data and improving the data set, which is a big step ahead. So we'll move on to the next slide. What is our vision? So how do we solve this problem? That's where NaPTAN comes in. Our goal is straightforward: to build a single, reliable source for bus stop accessibility data. Now, you might wonder why we are focusing on bus stops. We are taking this as a targeted approach for three reasons. First, bus stops make around 90% of the public transport access points. Second, they are essential for the first and the last mile of almost every journey. And finally, in many communities, bus stops are the only form of transport available. So if we are starting here, we can make the real difference. We can put consistent accessibility information into journey planners. These journey planners, which people are already using for their journeys. It means there will be more confidence, more independence, and trust from the passengers. And ultimately, we are making the public transport more inclusive. So how did our journey begin? We understood the problem at high level. We started shaping a solution. The first step was an alpha phase to create a strong foundation for everything that would follow. Our priority at this stage was to listen and to learn. We focused on understanding what accessibility data passengers need and how they use it to make their travel decisions. At the same time, we explored data consumers, the travel app developers, what they require in order to integrate this accessibility information into their systems effectively. So in this phase, we tested the technology. Using a limited controlled data set, we proved that we can ingest data from various sources, link these data set with official NaPTAN bus stop information, and then provide it to the journey planners via APIs. Alongside this, we carried out a research on small scale and few experiments to understand the tools, the underlying architecture, and the data design that we would need to scale this solution. The alpha phase was a key milestone. It not only confirmed the technical approach was viable, but helped us also choose the right tools. So from here, we moved into the beta phase. The successful alpha, we went into the beta, where the focus shifted from building a user-driven MVP. We started with discovery, inception, work to refine the plan and make the key decisions to go ahead. While we considered a wide range of accessibility needs, mobility, visual, and cognitive, we made a strategic decision to focus first on wheelchair users. There are two main reasons that why we made this decision. First, many bus operators already provide data on which buses are wheelchair accessible. This created a very valuable opportunity to link these two most important parts of the journey, an accessible bus stop and an accessible vehicle. So, and secondly, narrowing down our focus allowed us to do an in-depth research with wheelchair users, which included ethnographic research. So we are assured that the street furniture data elements that we are using address the real world problems. Also, this data can also benefit to other group of passenger with similar requirements. So it is extended the impact from beyond our initial focus. So in the beta phase, we started with a hypothesis. We set up a hypothesis and we wanted to validate that hypothesis. The hypothesis that we worked around was that the bus stops with high frequency of buses, they are called the trunk stops, are generally more accessible than the bus stops with lower frequency, which are known as branch stops. By accessible here, we specifically mean accessibility for wheelchair users and not as a whole. So based on the research, we selected two key street furniture elements to test, the hard surface and the curb. These two elements are essential for wheelchair users as they provide a stable surface to move, maneuver, and get on off the bus. But I want to highlight that these are not the only important street furniture element, but they form the minimum criteria for our initial tests. And one of the other criteria for accessibility that we have taken into consideration is that we will be taking only marked bus stops in NaPTAN. The temporary stops such as hail and ride are not included in this scope. So how we validated this beta methodology and to validate the hypothesis. So we set up a we took data for 6 different local authorities. How the process works. First, we collect bus frequency data for the local authority and plot it on the graph, as you can see in the image. From there, we pick a split point to separate stops into high frequency trunk and a lower frequency bus branch stops. And then we focus on the trunk stops only. We picked statistically, we pick a sample size in the trunk range and then used Google Street View to check the street furniture data at each bus stop. We repeated this process until 80% of trunk stops in our sample had the key features for wheelchair users. We repeated this process again and again for 6 local authorities that we chose in the beginning, and we were able to validate our hypothesis. So this gave us confidence to move ahead on the work building into our data pipeline. So street furniture that we collected. The next slide, please, Emily. Yeah. So for our hypothesis, we focused on wheelchair accessibility, and we were using only 2 street furniture elements, the hard surface and the high curb. But this is only the first step. Hypothesis was designed to test and prove the approach and not to define the limits of what accessibility means. That's why we collected data to validate the hypothesis. We didn't stop at those 2 street furniture elements. We intentionally gathered more information than we needed. This way, we start to build a rich picture of the accessibility needs. This laid groundwork for the data pipeline as well, which we need to grow and scale. And this data set we created is called New Olympic dataset. I will be using this term quite a bit, so I just want to highlight that. So next was the data pipeline. We validated the hypothesis successfully. We collected the data. And the next is building the scalable NaPTAN data pipeline. So this pipeline is built around few core principles to ensure the quality and trustability of the data. First and foremost, data from local authorities always takes priority. We treat local authority data as source of truth. Other data sets that we have, like New Olympic data set, Ordnance Survey, it's only the supplementary data that will fill the gaps where local authority data is not yet available. We have tested this approach successfully with the 3 local authorities who shared their accessibility data with us. The output of this pipeline is a clean and a simple schema. It has ATCO code to uniquely identify the bus stop, followed by is mobility accessible, which is a simple yes and no answer for wheelchair accessibility based on hard surface and curb height. And then is the mobility level. In the first iteration, it is A, always set to a lowest level, because we are focusing only on the essential features needed for wheelchair users at this point. Certainty level field capture the level of confidence in this data. For example, whether the bus stop is visually checked against a street furniture or inferred through trunk branch hypothesis. The schema also records the source, whether the data is coming from local authority or is the data coming from a New Olympic data set, and the date modified to inform when the record was last modified. So this was at high level the solution looked like. This slide shows the high level visual representation of data pipeline. The pipeline is scalable. As you can see, it is capable of ingesting data from multiple sources. Since data comes in different shapes, forms, formats, it is normalized to fit a standard structure. Accessibility is then inferred on a set of business rules. And finally, the data is made available via API to data consumers. On the back of this solution, we are doing continuous user research, and we are creating a constant feedback loop with data consumer to ensure that the solution that we are building is actually useful. So during these user research sessions, we received a key feedback. Data consumers preferred raw street furniture data rather than simple yes and no that infers bus stop accessibility. So their reasoning was pretty clear and insightful. Accessibility needs are very wide. What works for one person may not work for another person. By providing the raw data, applications can create customized, flexible solutions, allowing the passengers to make their decision based on their own specific needs. This feedback was crucial, and we took it on board. After consulting with internal policy and subject matter experts, we made key decisions. We will remove accessibility inferences from pipeline. The data consumers would be getting a rich, detailed street furniture data. And the certainty level, which represents the probabilistic assessment of accessibility, we decided that data should not be probabilistic. So we will be removing that aspect as well from the data pipeline. We move to the new approach that we are taking. As we discussed, providing raw street furniture data in to the data consumers. But what brings us is a new challenge, the scale of this task. There are over 400,000 bus stops, and manually checking each one is simply not feasible. And on top of that, we are not yet aware of data available with local authorities. So this challenge led us to the next stage of the project, which is machine learning to automate street furniture data collection. We launched a new alpha phase with 3 clear objectives. First, comparing the various tools on the market to ensure we select the most effective tools for our use case. Second, testing these models to ensure that they are reliable and they are accurate. And finally, building a functional prototype. Our approach is structured. We are starting by testing the out-of-box capabilities of these pre-trained models to see how well it performs without any modifications. And based on these initial results, we'll train the model to improve its performance and accuracy. The goal of this alpha phase is to validate if it is feasible to scale an AI approach to collect the street furniture data. Now, where we are, we now have model which we want to use to do the street furniture detection and annotation. And the next steps, what we are doing is testing and refining these models. For this AI approach, there are various approaches that could be used, but the approach that we are using is called prompt-based object detection. It's a technique where we give AI a text instruction to tell it what to look for in an image. It works in 3 easy steps, as it's shown in the diagram. We provide a prompt, the AI detects the object, and it then labels them. As you can see in the image on the right-hand side, the boundary boxes is what the output we get from the AI model. This is the core of how we can automate the collection of street furniture data at scale, and we can make the progress much faster and consistent than the manual methods that we could use. So finally, where we are and what is the path forward? We have tested the model that we have chosen with a small set of data, and the initial results are quite promising. And this has validated our core approach as well. The next step is to move to a large-scale pilot, which we will be launching in a few upcoming weeks. It's not weeks, sorry, it's days. So the phase, it's all about scaling up for testing the model. In this phase, we'll be testing the model to see how it perform across England, Wales, Scotland, that variety of data and the bus stops that sits there. We are also putting it through the complexities of the real world and testing it with different regions from urban to suburban to rural, and checking it against variation in object sizes and types as well. So we will be checking. Most importantly, I think we will be checking it for the reliability to make sure that it can accurately and confidently detect the street furniture data. So, yeah, here we are. That's where we are in the process now. I have given a lot of information and I really appreciate your patience. I'll pause here, and if we have any questions, we can take it from here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Geeta. I can see that there are a couple of questions that we haven't responded to yet in the chat. I'll just speak to Matthew's question and then we'll go to Martin if you still have your hand up. Is there a risk of the data being used being out of date? Some areas on Google may not have been updated in a few years, so a stop shown as not accessible could be accessible now or vice versa. This is something that we have thought about and we'll also be testing as part of our pilot with Google, because we do appreciate that as part of our initial findings that some of those images are indeed quite old. So hopefully we'll be able to measure those metrics. Okay, so who was the first person that had their hand up? Was it Martin? Yeah, Martin Davis.
Well, I'd sort of be interested to find out, would it require us as the local authority to be making sure our own systems are up to date? You know, if we want to sort of, implement what's being discussed here, would we have to make sure our own? Would we have to make any changes?
Sorry, you went onto mute there at the end.
Sorry. Would we sort of have to make sure our own? Would we have to change would we have to sort of change anything our end? You know, sort of what data we're collecting, or like say details of our assets or anything?
Yeah. No, thank you very much for that question. This is what we would like to speak to local transport authorities about, or people who work with NaPTAN data on behalf of local transport authorities. We'd just like to understand better, your processes, your systems, and talk about the data that we would like to provide. But we could do that better if we understand what data you have.
I think that makes sense.
Great, thank you very much. And if you could share your contact details with us, that'd be great. And we can speak to you further about that.
Awesome, no problem.
Great, thank you. Ian.
Yeah, morning. Yeah, thanks for the slideshow there. Just a quick one. Have you actually engaged with any of the sort of known software companies that provide NaPTAN systems to local authorities to see what can be added in? We use a system which is a national system, and at the moment we can't export in XML the assets that are at each stop. We can do the basic NaPTAN stuff, but not the assets, and that's why I'm asking what fields are required.
Sure. Yeah, no, as I mentioned, we would like to speak to a wider group of people. We do have a handful of organisations and people that we're speaking to as part of our private beta. So generally they're organisations that would provide journey planning apps to the public. But we would like to speak to a more varied group to help us with our service design. So Ian, if you haven't already sent over your details so we could chat further, I'd love to do that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I was just thinking whether you've been in touch with companies like sort of Velocity, Omnibus type thing, because they're quite
we haven't.
popular. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not yet. But those are the next steps.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, you've got the details anyway. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Ian. Hello, Richard.
Hello, I just wanted to say I work with Martin in the West of England Combined Authority, and we are currently, like Martin's been undergoing a physical on-street asset capture study. The Unitary Authority of South Gloss Baines, North Somerset, obviously they own the infrastructures. They've carried out their own asset captures, but these do drift out of date. So I've been using good old Google Maps or Bing Maps to scan and position stops. We also work with the bus operators. We've got the ticket machine data for the location of where the vehicle stops and to reposition stops, bearings, and so on. But using Google, what I've noticed, once you get outside the big city areas like Bristol, Bath, etc., it seems to drift from 2025 to maybe 2020, 2017. And then, especially when there's new development, it can be a little bit out of date. And there's many instances I've come across where stops have been upgraded, relocated, raised curbs. Accessibility is now in place, but you're still looking at a stop that's 6 years old on Google.
Oh, no, absolutely. And we found the same when we were looking at some data, stops that are now in a library or a shop or something similar. But this is something that we're looking at as part of our pilot, to see, whether we can determine, okay, so what would be a reasonable amount of time? Would we just be looking at images or data for the last 2 years or longer? And that's something that we can speak to, the NaPTAN ecosystem, basically, if you will, community, and try and land on a reasonable recency date. Because of course we know that, not everything's going to be completely up to date, but what would be tolerable, if I can pronounce that word, or, acceptable.
Yeah. I just want to say the next step now is I work with Andy Hull, National PTI, and we're going to start uploading these assets into our Ments Diva system. And that'll be the next step now. Gather what we have that's verified in transition.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. We would love to speak to you about the data that you've collected. Would that be, well, actually, I won't ask you on this public call, but if you are willing to speak to us about this, please do confirm that in the chat or email into the inbox. That would be great.
Okay. I can see Andy's put his hand up. So hopefully, Andy, we can actually start moving some of these assets across. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Andy?
I'm just going to say I manage the data and the systems for about 36 local authorities.
Yes.
And we've got a full asset management module. So if we can get a standardized upload format, if we can understand that, that would be a great help. So there's several of the local authorities have already got all their full stop assets in the system. So we can make sure our data format is in there, is what you want as the export.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, we'll definitely be in touch. Right, any other questions? If there are no other questions, and please feel free to, post any other questions in the chat as we move forward. I think the next slide might be a comfort break. Yes, it is. Okay, well, please do take a break. After the break, Sham will take us through an exercise. So the break will be for about 5 minutes. So see you in 5 minutes' time. Thank you very much.
Sam, are you going to be sharing your screen for the next bit?
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you, Sham, and welcome back, everybody. Right, Sham, I'll hand over to you.
Yep, cool. Good morning, everyone. My name's Sham. I have just sent a link and I've just resent it now. So if you could just access that link. If you don't want to as well, feel free not to, but just have a look at the screen share once I do go for that. I will share my screen now. Cool. Can everyone see my screen? Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I just looked at the comments and there was Mark. You mentioned would the stop below be flagged as accessible? So as JM, one of our developers and tech leaders said that we're not determining it if it's accessible. We detect it by features, and we're doing it objectively. Whereas this activity is purposely going to be subjective, because what I've done is I've put 3 images on for rural, suburban, and urban. And what I want everyone to do is add information around if they feel the stop is accessible and why they think that. Just before we do that, a bit of a disclaimer is we're not using this for any research. It's just to get you thinking, to understand what your perception is of accessibility, what you feel determines what is accessible from a bus stop perspective. And that's it. And what I will do is give you a brief 30-second overview of Mural, because I see a lot of people moving the images. There's a button that says follow me. So if you're on the Mural, you can essentially follow me. So the image is here. I know a few people have been moving that around, which is fine. In terms of the post-its, what I would like everyone to do is write whatever they need to within the post-its. If you need to add any more post-its, you essentially go here, stick any color that you like. It'll create a new one. And if you go to the corner, you can essentially size however you want to. And if you click onto the post-it, you can move it around to wherever you need to. So what I'm going to do is give everyone 10 minutes to write anything they would like within this. Don't worry about sizing or anything like that. By the way, I'll sort all that. And don't worry about formatting. I'll move things around. I'll give everyone 10 minutes. We'll do a recap for the 5 minutes after that to see if there's any specific themes that people have captured together as a group, or if there's any outliers that we might have not thought of or people have looked at and we haven't actually thought about generally as people. So I'll let you crack on. I will put a timer on here for 10 minutes. If I feel there's no movement within that time period, I'll stop it and we can just kind of discuss that going forward. Has everyone got access to the link? Everyone okay? Cool. I see a lot of movement.
On Tuesday.
Someone's put inaccessible here. Feel free to add the detail in. Tell us why you think it's inaccessible. The why is really important to us, just generally for us to understand, for you to understand, for everyone on the call to understand. So add as much as you can. I'm just going to move this one here, by the way, so everyone else can kind of go through it. while everyone's doing that, I'll also start grouping aspects that I think are quite similar to each other. Just hitting the 5 minute mark right now. I still see quite a lot of movement, so that's good. There's a big no not accessible post-it here. Whoever's wrote that, please add why you think that, and add the detail in there. So if you're the visiting something animal, just put that in there and go through that. Have a little test. Just got over a minute left. I still see quite a lot of movement. So if you need more time, let me know. Cool. Does anyone want me to extend it for a minute or so? I still see a lot of movement, a little bit more typing. So if you're still finishing off, feel free to do so. And if not, we can just carry on and go to a bit of grouping. And what I'll do, I'm still assuming everyone can still see my screen. What I'll do, I'll start from bottom to top, because it looks like urban task 3 has the least amount of stickies, and task 1 has the most, potentially. Number 2 is in between. And the reason why we've done this is a lot of this is very subjective, because as what JM said, we're looking at furniture and feature detection rather than saying this is accessible or it's not, because you can't really define that. And there's a lot of information here where one person is saying one thing, another person is saying another, which is why I wanted to do this activity. So you to understand what accessibility looks like to one person is completely different to what it looks like for another. And that will carry on. Someone wrote on the urban task 3 that the gradient's really good. And then someone else said the gradient's only issue is the gradient of the road. So it depends what angle you're coming this from what position of accessibility that you're looking at. But there's a lot of for the urban one, there's a lot of grouping that we looked at, which is road markings, it's got a shelter, it's got the high curb, it's got the bus flag, it's got some signage in terms of information. But then there's a lot of information around, is the timetable large enough? Lowered curb might be an issue, depending on what it is. Shelter doesn't have accessibility seating. Then yeah, the hill, the aspect of that, the gradient. So that's kind of the piece that we're looking at. So it's good information, this. And then if I scroll up to number 2, this was, I think, the sticky middle on purpose, because there's a lot of accessibility features that it has and a lot of that it doesn't. So a lot of people have said it's partially accessible. There's no flag, no high curb, but there's road markings. Is the tactile paving? Maybe not. Seating, low handle. Whoever wrote this, by the way, thank you very much, because I don't know this, that the red color is dementia friendly. So that's really useful to know. So let's put that in. Thank you for that. There's lighting. So we've had discussions around lighting. What do you define as good lighting? How do you define that? And that's also based on visual impairment. What does that look like for somebody that has visual impairment versus someone that doesn't? So a lot of this information is really good. There's here, and this was purposely a little curveball, and I know a lot of people have flagged this up. There's bollards here for wheelchair accessibility, which I purposely put this image on there to see if anyone flagged up. Quite a lot of you did. That's really good. In regards to the shelter, the audio aspect, no bus curbs. Yeah, the only one person that I want to flag up is someone wrote no, not accessible. If you want to keep adding that in while I'm still waffling on, feel free, because I think it'd be good to get the views for that as well. Difficult to see, yeah, understandable. Maybe bollards, ability to get the ramp, yep. Understanding the present sufficient of width, yep. These are things that we're definitely looking at from a feature detection perspective. And then you look at the rural one, which essentially is, I won't use any words for that, but it's not the greatest in terms of accessibility, but it's got a flag, and that's about it, to be fair. We've looked at everyone saying there's no hard crossing, there's no drop curb, it's inaccessible from a timetable perspective, in terms of where it is, in terms of the ground, in terms of road markings, in terms of timetable, in terms of standing there's no shelter, there's no features of what we're looking for. There's no timetable, there's a lot here as well. No raise curve, no drop curve, no timetable, no RTIs, with any audible aspect, no pavement. So it is difficult for someone with accessibility aspects. So I will leave that there and I'll hand it back over to Bibi now. I hope you enjoyed that. I've kept it as simple as possible, but just the main aspect for this was for you to understand that accessibility is very subjective depending on who you speak to. So we're trying to make it as objective as possible so we can help as many people with accessibility going forward with NaPTAN. So I'll stop sharing my screen. Thank you very much for your participation in that. I'll pass it over to Bibi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sham. Okay, so how can local transport authorities help? If you go to the next slide, please, Emily. Well, our next steps is that we would like to work with more local transport authorities or organisations or people that work with NaPTAN on behalf of local transport authorities. We're going to start our AI pilot, partnering with Google imminently within the next few days. So hopefully we'll be able to update you on progress with that. And just to recap, that pilot is to see whether we can utilize AI model or agents to detect street furniture at a bus stop to a higher enough level of confidence. We are also going to organise more meetings with our private beta participants and also explore other sources of data, which is we've already started doing, such as ordnance survey data for pavement width. Next slide, please. Okay, so please contact us if you're LTA or an organisation that works with an LTA. The email address is there, and I think I posted it in the chat as well. Also on our website, we will be also sending out a newsletter soon after this meeting. Our next public meeting dates are Thursday, 30th of October and Monday, the 19th of January. We'll let you know what the topics of those meetings will be. Thanks a lot, Sham. And thank you, Stuart, stating that our supplier is trialling AI for data capture. That's really cool. Next slide, please, Emily. Thank you very much. Very warm thank you from everybody on the team for your time this morning. We hope that